JFK Airport, Gate C-17, 3:38 p.m. The hiss of cabin pressure was still fading when the confrontation began. "Sir," the flight attendant's voice cut to the low hum of first-class boarding chatter. "I'm going to need you to move." Heads turned. The clink of a champagne flute stopped midair. Row 1A, prime seat by the window, occupied by a tall, sharply dressed black man in a charcoal gray suit, legs crossed, iPad on lap, fingers mid-scroll. Calm. Still. He looked up slowly. "I'm sorry." His tone was even, measured, but his eyes didn't blink. The flight attendant, mid-30s, blonde bob, crisp navy uniform, stood with a posture that screamed policy. Her name tag caught the overhead light. "S. Delaney, you're in the wrong seat," she said. "This cabin is reserved for first-class passengers." He raised a single brow, tapped his screen. "And this is seat 1A, first class. It's on my boarding pass." He turned the screen toward her, unfazed. Delaney barely glanced at it. "I understand, but it's possible you were upgraded, or assigned incorrectly. These things happen. We've had issues before." He didn't move. "Is there a problem with my ticket?" A middle-aged man in onesie leaned into the aisle. Tan suit, AirPods in. "Probably a booking glitch," he offered loudly. "Happened to my assistant last week. They tried to give him 1B by mistake." He chuckled like they were sharing a joke. "I'm quite sure there's no glitch," the man in 1A replied. Turning back to Delaney, "My name is Darius Grant. This seat was purchased directly. Corporate card. Full fare." Delaney's smile faltered just enough to show strain. "I'll need to verify that. Please step into the aisle so we can sort out." The silence spread. A teenager across the aisle, hoodie, headphones around her neck, lifted her phone. Red record light blinking. Live. Darius didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He just stared. "Ma'am," he said, calm as still water, "if you're going to make assumptions, I suggest you bring your supervisor." Delaney huffed and turned. "David," she called, "can you come here?" From the galley, a second attendant emerged. Older, Indian American, the kind who'd worked his way up through the years and now wore authority like cologne. "What's going on?" "This gentleman claims to have a ticket for 1A, she said, arms folded. David looked at Darius, then the seat, then the boarding pass Delaney handed him. He held it up like a jeweler, inspecting a counterfeit diamond. His tone shifted into corporate neutral. "Sir, I understand your frustration, but this is a high-demand cabin. Mistakes are rare, but not impossible. It's likely a gate error. We can find you a seat in business until we clarify." Darius closed his iPad and set it gently on the tray. "I'm not moving." "Sir..." "Not until someone explains why the two passengers in 1B and 1C weren't questioned," he said, motioning subtly toward the two white men beside him. "Only me." "That's not..." Delaney started, then cut herself off. The teenager across the aisle whispered into her phone. "Y'all seeing this, right? Dude's being told to move out of first class, and his ticket says 1A. Live at JFK. American Airlines. Racism real subtle today." The view count ticked up. 5:12, 8:29, 1:147. Darius reached into his jacket, pulled out his wallet, and flipped it open with practiced precision. Inside, a black titanium American Airlines Executive Elite card, engraved with his name, and something else, barely visible, tucked behind it, a slim metal ID badge. No one could quite see what it said. "I've flown 2.3 million miles with this airline," Darius said, not as a boast but a receipt. "I've held this card for 12 years. That seat," he tapped the headrest 1A, "has had my name on it for the past 3 weeks." David swallowed. Delaney stepped back, face flushed now. "Still," she muttered, "we'll need to confirm with the gate. It's procedure." "You mean," Darius said evenly, "procedure for me." A murmur rippled through the cabin. A woman in 2D leaned into her husband. "This is getting ugly," she whispered. The man in 1C shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his phone. "Just put him in another seat, and let's go. Some of us have meetings." David looked uncertain now. Sir, if you could just wait in the aisle, we'll... No, Darius' voice, though soft, dropped into something deeper, firmer. I'm not going anywhere. The cabin intercom crackled. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We are moments away from closing the cabin doors. Please ensure all carry-ons are secured and your mobile devices are in airplane mode. Delaney stepped closer, lower voice now. Look, she said, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Darius leaned back in his seat, gaze locked on hers. It's already harder than it needs to be. You made sure of that. From the rear of the cabin, a uniformed security officer stepped aboard, tall, Hispanic, late 30s, resting one hand casually on his utility belt. Problem? He asked the attendants. This passenger is refusing to comply with seating instructions, David said, pointing. The officer turned to Darius. Sir, you've got 30 seconds to either move or deplane voluntarily. The live stream had 6,400 viewers now. Comments exploded. This is wild. They're trying to drag a black man out of first class. He's got the top tier card. WTH. Hashtag first class while black. Darius stood up, not to leave, but to face the cabin. All eyes turned. His 6'2" frame filled the space. The tailored cut of his suit shimmered faintly in the overhead lights. He spoke not to the staff, but to the passengers. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, voice quiet but steady. I apologize for the delay. I know we all have places to be, but something happened here that I've seen too many times before. And today, I've decided not to ignore it. The teen's camera panned to capture the moment. A hush fell across the rows. I was told, without evidence, that I didn't belong here, that I must have gotten here by mistake, that I needed to justify my presence in a space I paid for, a space I earned. He looked at Delaney. That's not a booking error. That's bias. The security officer's hand lingered over his radio. Sir, Darius reached into his pocket again and pulled out a phone. With one tap, he made a call. This is Darius Grant, he said into mic. Initiate protocol G. David blinked. Wait. Protocol what? Darius looked him dead in the eye. You'll know it when it hits you. If you are enjoying this story, please subscribe to support the channel. 3:43 p.m. Still on the tarmac, JFK Airport. The security officer froze. The words Protocol G echoed with the kind of quiet threat that didn't need volume to carry weight. Passengers glanced at one another, confused. Delaney shifted uncomfortably. David looked toward the cockpit, hoping for guidance, but there was only silence, followed by the first sign that something was happening. The overhead lights flickered. The cabin screens went blank. A dull chime rang overhead. Ladies and gentlemen. The captain's voice came over the PA again, more clipped this time. We've just been notified of a system-wide delay. Please remain seated. We are currently unable to access updated flight plans. David turned to Delaney. System-wide, he whispered. Into A. The teenage girl whispered into her phone. Y'all, I think he just shut something down. Her live stream viewers had jumped past 18,000. 17 years earlier, Baltimore County, Maryland. 8-year-old Darius Grant stood outside the country club gates, holding a paper plate with half-eaten cake and a plastic fork. Inside, his friend's birthday party had moved the pool, but a man in a white shirt and golf shoes stood between him and the water. Sorry, son, the man had said, patting him awkwardly on the shoulder. Guests are members only. Rules are rules. Darius had watched his friend, a white boy from school, cannonball into the pool with the others. No one else had been stopped. Just him. His father had picked him up later and asked how the party went. Darius hadn't answered, but something had hardened that day. Not into anger, into resolve. 3:49 p.m., present day. Back in 1A, Darius sat again. Calm, unbothered. He pulled his iPad out once more and resumed reviewing a confidential PDF titled Flight Infrastructure Audit. American Airlines Q4 Draft. Across from him, the security officer muttered into his radio. Dispatch, can you confirm if a Darius Grant is? The response cut to the headset, audible enough to turn heads. Do not engage further. I repeat, stand down immediately. Escort is revoked. Passenger is confirmed credentialed. Stand down. The officer stiffened, then nodded. Delaney stepped back like she'd been slapped. Credentialed? She asked the air, but no one answered her. Flashback, 2013, Silicon Valley. Darius, then in his early 30s, had just pitched to a venture capital firm. Clean presentation, clean suit, clean numbers, but they passed. We just don't see the scalability, the partner had said. Later that week, a white Stanford dropout with a nearly identical business model landed a $7 million seed round. That startup failed in 9 months. Darius didn't rage. He built, quietly, methodically. By 2016, Grant Dynamics had secured a defense contract. By 2020, its infrastructure powered 3 Fortune 500 logistics firms. By 2022, it handled the entire back-end infrastructure of one of the top 4 U.S. airlines. 3:52 p.m. in the cabin, passengers began scrolling their phones. One murmured, "Why are all American Airlines flights suddenly delayed?" Another held up his app. "It's not just us. LAX, ATL, O'Hare, everything's grounded." The girl in 2A, still live, read the comments aloud. "Wait, he's a founder of Grant Dynamics?" Google says they run the airline's IT backend. Y'all, this guy is a system. Hashtag Darius Grant, hashtag Protocol G, hashtag First Class While Black. 50,000 viewers. And climbing. The man in 1C, previously smug, leaned toward Darius, voice tight. "You really shut it down?" Darius didn't look at him. "I prefer not to fly broken systems." The businessman swallowed hard and sat back. In row 3B, a young mother clutched her toddler a little tighter. She looked toward Darius and offered a quiet nod of respect. Flashback, 2019, Grant Dynamics headquarters. In a glass-walled conference room, Darius sat with his legal team drafting the fine print of a $480 million contract. On the last page was a clause he insisted on, against everyone's advice. Section 47, Executive Override Protocol G. In the event of discrimination, bias, or malicious action targeting company executive personnel during active service use, Grant Dynamics reserves the right to initiate immediate infrastructure lockdown pending executive review. "I know it's unusual," he had said to his lawyers, "but I've seen what happens when the powerless have no recourse. This clause is my seatbelt." Today, it was his airbag. 3:58 p.m., Flight 227 still grounded. Delaney stood frozen at the galley, her face pale, her jaw tight. David was at a loss. "Jessica, we need to talk to the pilot." She barely heard him. "I didn't mean," she whispered. "I wasn't trying to." David sighed. "It doesn't matter. You did." In the cabin, whispers turned to a buzz. Google results lit up screens. Passengers pieced it all together. News anchors began tweeting. Influencers reshared the live stream. Airline stock prices ticked downward. Wall Street was watching. In seat 1A, Darius tapped an AirPod and answered a call. "Mr. Grant, this is Allison from Public Affairs. You got the CEO of the airline on the line in 90 seconds. "Put him through," Darius said. Final scene, Act 2 close. The cabin was dead silent now, save for the buzzing phones and the occasional murmur of disbelief. Darius looked out the window, not at the tarmac, but beyond it. He thought of the country club, the failed VC pitch, the years of being watched a little too closely, followed in stores, ignored in boardrooms, until he built something too big to be ignored. This plane, this moment, this silence wasn't about a seat. It was about the weight of history finally pressing back. He closed his eyes, took one breath, then opened them as the call connected. "Mr. Grant," came the voice, panicked but polished. "This is Daniel Rhodes, CEO of American Airlines. I believe we have a very serious situation." Darius smiled, just slightly. "Yes, Daniel," he said. "We do." 4:01 p.m. JFK Airport. Gate C-17, Flight 227. The captain had been pacing inside the cockpit for 2 full minutes. "All American flights are frozen," he repeated into his headset. Confirmed, came the crackled voice from operations. Not just JFK. Nationwide, we're showing total infrastructure freeze. No updates, no check-ins, no gate assignments. Every hub is like someone flipped a master switch. The captain swallowed. And the source? Pause. Then, preliminary trace routes all lead back to Grant Dynamics. The captain glanced toward first class, with a man in 1A sat calmly, speaking into his AirPod, not shouting, not sweating, just controlling the sky. 4:02 p.m., Grant Dynamics Command Center, Los Angeles. A wall of screens flicker with red error codes and flight data. Engineers moved quickly but didn't panic. One senior developer pointed to a screen. Protocol G confirmed. Initiated by executive fingerprint and voice ID. Full systems lockdown in compliance with Clause 47. The VP of Systems, a woman in her 50s, tapped her earpiece. No override unless authorization comes directly from Darius. The junior tech beside her muttered, "This all because of a seat?" She shook her head. "No, this is about the last seat." 4:03 p.m., on-board flight 227. The cabin had shifted. Where there was once skepticism, now there was awe. The teenage girl in 2A, now with 96,000 livestream viewers, whispered into her phone, "They say he's the guy who built the system. He just paused the airline. All of it." Her screen filled with comments. A whole Texio got profiled mid-flight. "Y'all still think black people don't belong in first class? This is how you move in silence and shake the nation. Hashtag Protocol G, hashtag Darius Grant, hashtag Flying Wild Black." Jessica Delaney stood near the galley, shaken. Her hands trembled around the edges of a paper manifest. She'd been so sure, so certain, that he didn't belong. That gut assumption, sharpened by years of quiet bias, now felt like an anchor dragging her into cold water. David leaned against the wall, beside her. "We've crossed into something else now," he said. "This isn't just PR. It's precedent." 4:05 p.m., 35,000 feet above Chicago. Daniel Rhodes, CEO of American Airlines, was aboard a private jet en route to a summit in San Francisco when the call connected. Darius's voice came through, clear and composed. "Daniel, I trust you're aware of what's happening." Rhodes clenched his jaw. "My CIO just confirmed it. All back-end systems are down. No planes moving. No data syncing. No gates assigning. You brought my airline to a standstill." "Correction," Darius replied. "Your airline brought itself here. I simply enforced the terms of our agreement. You could have called me first." Rhodes' voice cracked under pressure. "Handled this discreetly. And given you time to bury it? Time to minimize it? Gaslight the public? Pretend it was a disruption and nothing more." Rhodes exhaled slowly. "Okay, what do you want?" 4:07 p.m., cabin of Flight 227. Passengers were now openly discussing Darius in hushed but reverent tones. "He's worth over $400 million, whispered the businessman in 1C, reading from Google. "His company powers not just American, but FedEx and parts of Southwest." A college student in 4D murmured, "And they try to move him like he was nothing." The young mom in 2B spoke up gently. "He wasn't loud. He didn't fight. He let them sink themselves." Even the captain stepped out of the cockpit, curiosity outweighing authority now. "Mr. Grant," he said, "if there's anything I can do to assist." Darius looked up. "Just ensure no one else is mistreated today. Captain. That'll be enough." 4:08 p.m., Rhodes jet airborne. Rhodes now stood, pacing, phone to ear. "You've already cost us $16 million in delayed flights and misconnections. Every minute we stay down, that number climbs." "I'm aware," Darius said flatly. "You want money? A settlement? What?" Darius chuckled once, low and humorless. "Daniel, if I wanted revenge, I would have wiped your databases. I don't want chaos. I want change." Rhodes was quiet. Then Darius continued. "You'll publicly announce a 3-part reform plan within 72 hours. First, immediate suspension and investigation of the staff involved. Second, implementation of a bias training system across all customer-facing positions, vetted by an independent panel. Third, the creation of a public reporting platform for bias incidents. Rhodes nearly dropped the phone. That's insane. That's billions in costs. Darius's reply was clinical, not nearly as costly as a class action lawsuit, or as painful as public exposure, or as devastating as the termination of our contract, which, by the way, I am prepared to execute within the hour. 4:10 p.m., live stream now at 150,000 viewers. Back in the cabin, the teenager in 2A couldn't speak. The chat flooded. He's rewriting airline policy mid-flight. This is history. Black power, tech power, class power, all rolled into one. He used their own contract to hold them accountable. Genius. A producer at CNN clipped the live stream and shared it with a cheering. American Airlines faces real-time reckoning after first-class incident. The caption read, "Passenger profiles turn catastrophic when the person you underestimate built your operating system." 4:12 p.m., Rhodes jet. "Fine," Rhodes snapped. "We'll announce the plan. But give us time. We need board approval." "You have 72 hours," Darius said. "Any delay, any hedging, and the termination clause activates. Our systems are backed up hourly. We walk, and you lose everything." Rhodes inhaled sharply. Then silence. Darius waited. Then, "Okay," Rhodes said finally. "Okay, we'll comply. One more thing," Darius added. "I want a direct statement from you, on video, apologizing not for a misunderstanding, but for institutional bias. And I want it streamed live on your platforms." "You're pushing it," Rhodes hissed. "No, Daniel," Darius said, eyes locked on the cabin window, watching the slow roll of tug vehicles on the runway. "I'm pulling it back from the edge for you." 4:15 p.m., closing scene of Act 3. The plane remained grounded. The airline remained frozen. But a shift had occurred, one deeper than altitude or schedule. Flight 227 had become a courtroom, a stage, a boardroom, a moment of reckoning. Jessica Delaney stood silently as David placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't pull away. Her eyes stayed on Darius, no longer filled with irritation, but with recognition. Darius turned toward her, gaze neutral. "I don't hate you," he said softly. "I don't need you to be punished." He paused. "I need you to remember this. The next time you think someone doesn't belong, ask yourself, why do you believe that, and what will it cost you to be wrong?" The question hung in the air, heavier than the plane itself. 4:22 p.m., Flight 227 still grounded, JFK tarmac. The aircraft hadn't moved in 40 minutes, but the world outside it had exploded. Phones buzzed in every row. Twitter was ablaze. Cable news shows had gone to breaking coverage. The teenager in 2A, whose live stream had now reached 185,000 viewers, had stopped narrating. She just let the moment speak for itself. Darius Grant sat with his iPad open again, not checking the news, not responding to messages, just reviewing the live termination clause of a $487 million digital infrastructure contract between Grant Dynamics and American Airlines. The passenger in 3D whispered to her friend, "He's not bluffing. He's really going to make them pay." 4:23 p.m., American Airlines HQ, Dallas, Texas. Inside a glass-walled conference room, the senior leadership team was scrambling. Voices overlapped. Phone lines blinked red. On screen, a news crawl read, "American Airlines system failure linked to discrimination incident on board flight 227. Passenger identified as Grant Dynamics CEO. Major contracts in jeopardy." "Shut it down," one VP yelled. "Take it offline. We're bleeding." "You can't shut it down," said another. "He controls it, and unless we meet his demands, he'll pull out and terminate." The general counsel, Tom Briggs, slammed a folder down on the table. "I told you not to cut corners on these damn service contracts." Across the room, Sarah Ling, VP of Corporate Relations, looked at her laptop and went pale. NBC, CNN, and Reuters are running the full clip. And, oh my God, Hashtag Protocol G is now trending globally. 4:24 p.m., Rhodes jet en route to San Francisco. CEO Daniel Rhodes was hunched over in his seat, headset on, voice sharp with desperation. "Mr. Grant," he said into the call, "you've made your point. We're prepared to comply." Darius's voice came through, smooth as ever. "Then let's be clear," he said. "This isn't a settlement negotiation. This is a cultural correction." Rhodes took a breath. "We're ready to suspend the flight attendants." "That's step one," Darius said. "Step two, your public-facing policy reforms. Real training, real reporting tools, independent audits, not lip service, not some overpriced workshop with a catchy acronym. Fine, we'll allocate funding. $40 million, Darius replied, at minimum, for all customer-facing employees. Rhodes balked. "That's a fraction of what you spend on marketing and executive bonuses." Darius said coolly, "And I have your annual report open right here." Rhodes went quiet. 4:27 p.m., CNN studio, Manhattan. "This is unlike anything we've seen in real-time corporate accountability," the anchor said. Behind her, side-by-side images of Darius Grant and the airline's tail logo were on screen. A bullet point rundown read, "CEO refused first-class seat. Systems crash initiated by tech provider. Airline contracts at risk. Company faces $2.3 billion exposure. Stock dropped 7.2% and falling. And the most shocking part," the anchor continued, "is how calm and strategic the response has been from Darius Grant. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't call for a boycott. He triggered a clause and let the truth speak for itself." 4:30 p.m., Flight 227 cabin. Darius ended his call with Rhodes. He stood again. The cabin went silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice firm but composed, "thank you for your patience. I'd like to share what's happening, because transparency matters more than PR. Passengers turn in their seats. The CEO of this airline has agreed to my conditions," Darius said. "There will be accountability. There will be reform. And yes, there will be consequences." He paused. "Not for drama, for truth to settle. This isn't about me. It's about what happens when anyone is told they don't belong based on how they look, when assumptions are weaponized and authority is misused." Jessica Delaney, standing in the galley, had tears in her eyes. Her face was drained of color. "I didn't know," she whispered, half to herself. Darius turned his gaze toward her. "No, you didn't. But that's the problem. Too many people don't know and still act." David, standing beside her, said nothing, but his face showed something new. Shame, yes, but also awakening. 4:35 p.m., American Airlines crisis call, live transcription. Daniel Rhodes. "We're preparing the public statement. Legal has cleared it." Sarah Ling. "What tone are we taking?" Darius, joining the call, honest. The entire boardroom fell silent. "Don't deflect. Don't say misunderstanding. Say what happened. Say that a black passenger was questioned, harassed, profiled. Say that your system failed not just technically, but ethically." Rhodes nodded slowly. "Understood." Darius continued. "And your apology isn't to me. It's to every person who's ever been told, in subtle and unsubtle ways, that they don't belong." 4:40 p.m., Flight 227. Final moments before pushback. The captain returned to the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've received clearance. Systems are being restored. We'll be departing shortly. Thank you for your patience." Passengers murmured. A few clapped. The elderly woman in 1F leaned over and touched Darius's wrist. "I saw things like this in the 60s, she whispered, "but never thought I'd see someone turn around like this." Darius gave her a soft nod. "We don't all get this kind of platform," she added. "Thank you for using yours." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. The moment was the reply. 4:45 p.m., Airline HQ, Dallas. Statement draft finalized. Official statement. "Today, an incident aboard American Airlines Flight 227 forced us to confront a hard truth. Despite our best intentions, bias still lives in the margins of our service. Darius Grant, a longtime partner and respected leader in the technology space, was refused his first-class seat due to assumptions made by our staff. We sincerely apologize to Mr. Grant and to the broader community affected by incidents like this every day. We are enacting a 3-tier reform initiative, effective immediately. Suspension and investigation of the crew involved. Mandatory, audited bias training for all customer-facing employees. A public portal for reporting and tracking discrimination complaints. We are grateful to Mr. Grant for holding us accountable and for showing us that power, when used with integrity, creates lasting change. Daniel Rhodes, CEO, 4:48 p.m., final beat of Act 4. Darius sat back down, adjusted his tie, and opened the same quarterly revenue report he had been reading before the confrontation began. Everything looked normal, except now the world had shifted. As the plane pushed back from the gate, the live stream hit 200,000 viewers. And somewhere, in homes, on phones, in classrooms and boardrooms alike, conversations began, not about revenge, not about power, about accountability, about belonging, about the cost of assumptions. The businessman in 1C turned to Darius, voice trembling. "I owe you an apology." Darius looked up. "No," he said. "You owe it to yourself, to be better next time." The plane taxied forward. But history already had taken flight. 6 weeks later, Los Angeles. The sun bathed the skyline in soft gold as Darius Grant stood at the edge of the rooftop terrace at Grant Dynamics HQ. In his hands was a thick envelope, sealed, hand-addressed in neat cursive. Inside, a personal letter. "Mr. Grant, I completed the program. I've cried more in the past 30 days than I have in the past 5 years. I saw myself in every case study, heard myself in every recorded scenario, watched replays of the exact tone, the same clip phrases I used that day. Are you sure? Let's just verify. You people, I didn't realize how deeply it lived in me. But I know now, and I am sorry, not just for what I did, but for how many times I never realized I did it. Next week, I begin my first shift as Bias Prevention Program Coordinator. I will train the next wave of airline employees, because if change is real, it must be taught. Thank you for the grace you didn't owe me. Jessica Delaney." Darius folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his coat pocket. His eyes scanned the city, but his mind was still 35,000 feet in the air. 30 days after Flight 227, global results. The impact had been staggering. American Airlines stock rebounded after reforms were announced, but the industry had changed. Delta, United, and JetBlue released statements committing to adopt similar policies. Hashtag Protocol G had been tweeted over 2.5 million times across 87 countries. Darius's speech to shareholders had gone viral. So had his quiet warning. Power without conscience is a threat, but power with purpose is transformation. CNN Town Hall, national broadcast, hosted by Anderson Cole. A sleek studio, lights dimmed, an intimate set. Darius sat across from the anchor, dressed in the same suit from that infamous flight. "And you had the power," the anchor asked, "to destroy them completely, cancel the contract, collapse their system. Why didn't you?" Darius looked straight ahead. "Because real power doesn't need destroy. It needs to instruct. If they had tried to bury it, silence it, I would have walked. But when they finally listened, really listened, I had a choice, punish them or push them." Cole leaned forward. "And now they're putting your face in ads." Darius chuckled. "I didn't ask for that, but I did ask that Jessica be featured beside me. Her story matters just as much." Redemption? Accountability and redemption. Not one or the other. That's how real change happens. Internal memo. American Airlines Confidential. To all employees. From Office of the CEO. Culture Reboot 2025. The incident with Mr. Graham was a reckoning, not just for our brand, but for our belief in what service means. This isn't a PR stunt. This is a structural rebuild. Every employee will complete the 3-phase program, beginning this quarter, and every reported incident of bias will now be public, audited, and measured. Dignity is not optional. It is the cost of entry into the new world of aviation. 3 months later, San Francisco International Airport. Jessica Delaney stood at the front of a small training room. Her posture was different now. No longer rigid, defensive, or corporate polished. She stood softer, sharper, too. Behind her, a projected slide. The moment I realized I was a problem, she clicked forward to the next slide. A still image from the Flight 227 live stream. Her face stern. Darius's face calm. The caption, "You don't belong here." She let the room sit with that. Then she said quietly, "And yet he did." Grant Dynamics HQ, 4-month shareholder meeting. A journalist raised her hand. "Mr. Grant," she said, "you've turned down multiple offers to capitalize on this moment. Sponsorships, political endorsements, even a Netflix series. Why?" Darius smiled. "Because that moment doesn't belong to me. It belongs to everyone who's ever been told they didn't belong. A beat. Then, we don't monetize trauma. We transform it." 12 months later, the legacy. The ripple effect was undeniable. 23 major corporations adopted similar contract clauses to Protocol G. 47 airlines worldwide implemented bias reporting technology powered by Grant Dynamics. A new law passed in 3 states mandating bias reform programs for all public-facing industries. Universities began teaching the Flight 227 incident as a case study in strategic activism. And for the first time, public trust in corporate accountability actually rose. National Civil Rights Conference, keynote speaker, Darius Grant. The ballroom was packed. Cameras, journalists, a live stream projected to millions. Darius stepped to the podium. His speech was titled simply, "Belonging isn't a luxury." He began, "I didn't intend to start a movement. I just wanted my seat. The one I paid for. The one I earned. But when that seat was questioned, when I was questioned, I made a choice, not to rage, but to respond, not to punish, but to prove that the system can be taught a better way." The room was silent. People say, "Darius, you had leverage. You had contracts. You had money." Yes, I did. But I also had patience. I had strategy. I had witnesses. And that made all the difference. He paused, scanning the faces. "The question isn't why me? It's who's next. Because if you see injustice and you do nothing, you are complicit. But if you use what you have, your voice, your vote, your camera, your conscience, you are part change." A standing ovation erupted, but Darius didn't smile. Not yet. He closed his speech with a quiet promise. This is not the end of the story. It's the start of a standard. Final scene. Flight 227. 1 year later, new crew. A black couple boards first class. The flight attendant, a young Asian man, smiles warmly. "Welcome. Seats 1A and 1B. Let me know if I can get you anything." They sit down, and the man pulls out a familiar-looking iPad. Grant Dynamics watermark faintly visible in the corner. Across the aisle, another passenger quietly snaps a photo. Not out of suspicion, but reverence. Because on this flight, in this moment, everyone knows. Some seats aren't given. They're claimed. And once claimed, they change everything. If you like this story, please subscribe to support this channel.